Do you have that memory of pure bliss that's always been there with you for as long as you can remember? A moment frozen in time you thought about so often, it seems you can detach yourself from it and walk around the room. A room with hazy edges but a central memory so vivid, it stayed and existed with you all of your life. I'm talking about deep-seated childhood memories, ones surrounded by times forgotten. I like to think of these as anchor points upon personal timelines, and even though other people might not know of them, to you and your universe, they are important. For me, this memory is watching the intro to The Moomins. Not an entire episode or many across my childhood, but in fact, just one early morning, sat in the back room of my house, watching an intro to a cartoon I would never see again throughout my entire career as a child. The name had stuck with me though, and I knew they were called The Moomins. But much like most childhood memories, the amount I thought about that cartoon and that morning regressed to obscurity in my day-to-day life. However, lately, as a newly found young adult, I have seemed to have found myself daydreaming about that day more and more, and the bliss of childhood memories has intrigued me. And that's what has led us to where we are now, and thus I present to you, Moomins, a nostalgic retrospective. Tove Jansson was born in 1914 in Helsinki, the current capital of Finland. However, at the time, it belonged to the Grand Duchy of Finland, within the Russian Empire. Born to artistic parents, the family was strong with creative essence, and her and her siblings would all go on to find their way in life through creative means. At the age of 14, she would write and illustrate her first picture book, titled Sarah and Pell, The Neptune's Children. This was unreleased, of course, but surely showed a glimpse into the potential and future the young girl had. One of her first jobs was working for a Swedish satire magazine in the 30s called Garm, who she would continue to work with until 1953. She would find brief international fame for her wartime satirical illustrations and the certain fascist dictators she would lampoon. From here on out, Tove Jansson would find her feet and grace us with her 9 Moomin novels, the first being titled The Moomins and the Great Flood. She would die in June 2001 at the grand old age of 86 and be buried with her parents and brother Lars, though her legacy and work lives on. Here's a small but interesting enough story on how the first Moomin was ever created, because of course it was not made by intention, but in fact by chance. One summer's day by the outhouse of their family's summer cottage upon the archipelago, Tove Jansson and her brother Per found themselves arguing about literary philosophy, the normal thing that people would argue about upon a summer's day. When the argument had ended and Per had downplayed Immanuel Kant, something that had offended Tove, she drew what she thought to be the ugliest creature imaginable on the outhouse. This would be the first ever drawing of a Moomin, for at the time she called it Snork, and though the original drawing was one more pointy and menacing, the Moomin was created. It's crossed my mind that there's a small chance that some of you might not have heard of what exactly a Moomin is, and therefore I must explain. The Moomins are a family and the centre characters of the Tove Jansson books. They are white plump trolls with rather large snouts. You have Moomin Papa, Moomin Mama, and most of all you have Moomintroll, also referred to simply as Moomin. He is the protagonist of the series. They live in Moominvalley in Moomin House and have a series of adventures with an assortment of friends and characters. And why were the Moomins created? The Winter War happened in 1939 after World War II had broken out, and it was between the Soviet Union and Tove's country, Finland. She felt that while the war had went on, all the colours had died, and for this reason she would have to write something that ended happily. And that led us to the start, and the first Moomin book, The Moomins and the Great Flood. Tove wrote the first Moomin book, The Moomins and the Great Flood, in 1939, but it didn't see publication until the end of the war in 1945. Though being canonically the first Moomin book, it's said to be considered a prelude to the Moomins due to the majority of the characters not being introduced until the next book. The next book being Comet in Moominland. I'm going to insert a picture of the first edition cover here because I find it, I find it to be pretty. The book was published in 1946, a year after the first book, and it's vital for its introduction of many characters, but most notably, Snufkin. The character of Snufkin is an interesting one to say the least. He's the protagonist Moomintroll's best friend. Snufkin is a free-travelling and free-thinking character who has a distaste for authority. The joys of Snufkin's life come from him playing the harmonica and fishing. With his nomadic lifestyle, he keeps all his possessions in his backpack, as he sees having too much stuff makes life a complication. The first two Moomin books, while setting up the Moomin universe, went largely unnoticed. It wasn't until the third book, Finn Family Moomintroll, was translated to English that Tove would find her international fame. However, in Finland, the book was called The Magician's Hat. The English name was given to it because, as until 1980, it was marketed as being the first Moomin book. Even in the English translation, in fear that children wouldn't know or understand what the Moomins are, it would feature an insert written as if it was being spoken by Moomin Mama, describing the Moomins and their nature. The following books, Moomin Papa's Memoirs and Moomin Summer Madness, would follow the same formula as the first three books. But then came Moominland Winter. Moominland Winter was the first book in which Tove would write knowing she had a worldwide audience with her majorly popular books, and instead of keeping them the same tone, it changed. Moominland Winter is a book in which, while the other members of the Moomin family are hibernating, Moomintroll finds himself unable to sleep, and therefore wandering in a world he shouldn't. This leads to him spending most of the book saddened, angry, or scared. This darker tone Tove adapted for this book would continue from here on out. This book was a deep look into the character of Moomintroll, and can be considered a pivotal moment in the franchise. The book series would only continue to develop from here on, as the next book, Moomin Papa at Sea, would work as a final transition from children's literature to adult. The book is written in dedication and memory to her father Tove Jansson. The book is meant to serve as a portrayal of his nature, but also be a heartfelt goodbye. The final book, Moominvalley in November, or in Finnish, Late in November, I find to be particularly hauntingly beautiful. Absent of the Moomin family, the story involves an ensemble cast of characters, including Snufkin. The book finds them reminiscing about good times in Moominvalley, and one by one visiting the Moomin house to see the family, only to find out they are not there. The rest of the book consists of the interactions between the visiting characters who occupy the house in their absence. Sombre in tone, the book is said to be written in response to the death of Tove's mother, Signe Hammersten Jansen, described as being a textbook on letting go, being a mature orphan and existing spiritually alone. The book features a young orphan as one of the characters on a quest to find her mother. Tove stated that after this work was published she couldn't go back and find that Moominvalley happy again. So when this book ended, so did the Moomin books. Screenwriter and children's author Frank Cottrell Boyce described the novel as the wisest and most moving book about mourning he's ever read. Coinciding with the Moomin books, which started in 1945, has always been the televised adaptations of the family, starting in 1959 with a German television show, Die Moomin Family. It ran for 12 episodes, filmed in black and white, and the Moomin family were portrayed by puppets. It showed the stories of Finn Family Moomintroll and Moomin Summer Madness. In 1969, something peculiar would happen, something that would foreshadow the following events. Tokyo Movie Shinsha in Japan would pick up the Moomin characters to make a Japanese anime television show, simply named Moomin. There's a controversial history to the show. The delicacy and gentle nature of the Moomins is thrown out. Tokyo Movie Shinsha would depict Moomintroll as a typical Japanese boy. He would get into fights and be the opposite of how he was written in the books. They even included an episode in which characters got drunk, something that never happened originally within the books. Tove found herself displeased by the treatment that had been given to her characters, and requested that Tokyo Movie Shinsha be removed from the project after 25 episodes. Mushi Productions would take over from here on out, and though we never got an account on how Tove felt about the series, it's presumed she would be happier with it. The Mushy Productions episodes, which would run up to episode 65, would much more closely follow the tone of the books and remove all fighting and drinking. However, this series came with what would continue, that being an obsession with the Moomins in Japan. What came next is the cult classic and most authentic to the book representation of the Moomin family, referred to by many as the fuzzy felt Moomins. In 1977, Poland would come out with the Moomins, a stop-motion animation series of the books, in which Tove herself would often find herself involved in the creation. The series consisted of 100 5-minute episodes. It did, however, come under criticism from time to time, as despite being a children's show, it was believed to be too dark and scary in places. Then came my memory. In 1990, Japan would once again decide to create the Moomins. This would go on to be the most popular and successful Moomins portrayal, and be the one most remembered. The series, not as loyal as the 1977 version that Poland created to the source material, but much more than a 1969 one, would go on to spark the fire that would ignite what is known as the Moomin boom. While the Moomin books had always been bestsellers inside of Finland, this television series created a Moomin craze not only in Finland, but across the seas, mainly in Japan. The Moomins' cute appearance quickly became heavily marketable and would represent everything from shopping centre mascots to the characters being upon t-shirts. The Moomins had quickly become the way in which Finland would represent their country to others, covering the Helsinki airport in images of the characters and even opening a shop. Though the Moomin boom would be heavily criticised for not being loyal to the philosophical Moomin brand, the rights to the Moomin boom and dynasty would stay with the Jansson family, even turning down offers from Disney to keep hold of it and keep it authentic. It's estimated the brand makes a yearly retail value of €700 million. So where does this leave us today? Where are the Moomins now? Well, as of 2019, February to be exact, a new series of the Moomins is being created. Titled Moominvalley, with a budget of 20 million, Moominvalley is the most expensive Finnish television show of all time. One result of the Moomin boom was the creation of Moomin World in Finland, which opened in 1993, but you can still go visit today. The most popular feature inside the Moomin World is the Moomin House, in which you can wander and experience all 5 floors of the house in which the characters had lived. Today, and in fact very soon, there's plans to open up a Moomin Park in Japan. It's said to be split in 2 halves, Metsa Village, which allows the visitors to experience a Scandinavian atmosphere, and also Moominvalley Park, in which you, the visitor, will be able to experience the world of the Moomins. So though it has been many years since that beloved childhood morning of mine, it seems the popularity of the Moomins is as strong as it ever was, with these 2 new exciting projects. Thanks a lot for listening, and if you found this video good and you're still here at the end, I would be honestly enamoured if you would leave a like or even subscribe. This was more of a passion project of mine than anything, and if you found it interesting, well, that's just a bonus really. For my subscribers who expected something a bit different, we will be back to normal stuff next week. Thanks a lot and goodbye.